My name is Jordan Smotherman here with Military Athlete, and we're going to talk today a little bit about how we get strong and just a simple explanation about how the body actually changes to become stronger. So there are two primary adaptations that the body undergoes whenever it's put under some sort of training stress. There's neuromuscular adaptation, what we would refer to as strength training, and then there's hypertrophy. And that's typically referred to simply as hypertrophy training. So in the first adaptation, neuromuscular adaptation, I want you to think of the body as essentially an electrical circuit, because really that's what it is. The body is illustrated here is where the brain is just a battery made of fat, and it can generate a voltage. That voltage gets sent out as a current through the spinal cord to the different loads in your muscles. Your muscles could be lights, for example. That could be an electrical load. And so as a brain sends out a signal through the spinal cord, it turns a light on, the muscle does work. The more lights you turn on, the more work you can do. So back over here in this example, we've got our brain right here in the battery. All of our lights here are muscles. And then the wiring here that you see is the spinal cord and other central nervous wiring that goes all throughout your body. Now, as you can see in this illustration, not all of the lights are hooked up. And especially in untrained individuals, this is true. You have muscles that you are carrying around, and yet they don't do any work. They don't really help out in a lot of situations. And so whenever you take, let's say, an untrained individual and you put them under a back squat, they're going to use the muscles that are hooked up, but there's going to be some muscles that really can't do a lot of work. They can't really contribute, or they simply get overwhelmed and turn off. With training, with strength training or neuromuscular adaptation, how your body changes is by wiring up more of these muscles. By wiring up, I mean these muscles are allowed to receive the current and then turn on. And as they turn on, then you can see that they all do work now at this point. And so I'm not changing the amount of muscle that I have, whether or not I only have these two hooked up or I have all 6 hooked up. It's the same amount of mass that I'm carrying around in my body. But now all of these are doing the work. They're helping out in doing the work. And so with neuromuscular adaptation, my muscle size change is really very minimal. And so I don't have any mass gain. In other words, therefore I increase my relative strength, or strength per body weight. In our second adaptation, hypertrophy, I have, let's say, a circuit, a bicep or something, where my brain wants to turn on these light bulbs. Through hypertrophy training, I'm actually going to change the size of these light bulbs to be bigger. The bigger the light bulb, the brighter it is. But now I have more mass to carry around. I haven't hooked up more muscles necessarily. Instead, I've taken the existing muscle that is doing the work and I've made them bigger. That bigger muscle can do more work because it takes more of a stressor to damage it, to hurt it. And so it takes more to damage it, to get it to go through another adaptation where it would grow. Of course, one thing to understand is that the body is not a digital system. Therefore, adaptations occur along a continuum. Now what that means is that essentially at any time you're going to be experiencing some degree of both of these. But your training and the loads and the rep that you use will determine where on the continuum you lie. If this were our strength continuum, on one end we'd have strength training, or training that elicits a neuromuscular adaptation. And then on this other end we'd have strength endurance. And then somewhere in the middle we'd have hypertrophy. So why is this the strength continuum? because strength training here, or neuromuscular adaptation, occurs down here where we have very high relative or load relative to our absolute strength and low reps. Here in the middle with hypertrophy, we have a moderate load at moderate reps. This essentially is so important because you have to be able to do enough load where you can do enough reps in order to damage the muscle. Hypertrophy happens because of muscle damage. And then at strength endurance, on the opposite end, we of course have the opposite of strength, where we have a low load and high reps. So these are the two primary adaptations, and just a real simple explanation for you to understand what's happening in the body when we experience these two types of things to get us strong. One final note I'll say is that based on this, we can see that size does not equal strength. And I'm sure that you've known in your days of training pretty small guys who are incredibly strong. It's because they have a lot of neuromuscular adaptation. They're using their muscles, their existing muscles, very efficiently to do the work. So they don't necessarily need a lot of size.